Hello everybody, this is Professor Brukas. I'm actually recording this lecture because, as I was afraid of, I'm going to be at chemotherapy during class. So, as we looked at last class, we took a look at the video we've looked at the videos for both Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. And one of the things that gets pushed aside very frequently in the criminal justice system, and more frequently when we study serial homicides, are the victims. Think of those videos that we watched. When we watched Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah, my cat wants to join us. Jeffrey Dahmer explained what he did and how he did, but we never got the names of one of the victims. Ted Bundy, he killed over 30 people. Come on, Jack. He killed over 30 people. And we only had the name of 2 of the victims. And for years, that's been the case. However, one of the reasons why it's particularly acute to serial homicide is the fact people that commit serial homicide tend to have a lot of victims. So it's much tougher to focus on the 10 victims than it is on the one serial killer. The problem with this is that it kind of makes a hero in a really weird way out of the serial killer, while the serial killer becomes a mystic presence, someone we always remember, someone we always talk about. And the danger with that is that somebody might want to copy and do the same thing. And we don't want to celebrate a serial killer. And the last thing we want a serial killer to be is motivation for another serial killer. And serial killing is actually the last of a number of disciplines since the 90s that have jumped on the victims' rights bandwagon. It used to be we didn't pay much attention to victims at all. However, it was a thorough review of the way we process victims of sexual assault, where in many cases, and we still have work to do on this, but in many cases of sexual assault, we find ourselves blaming the victim as opposed, we blame the victim as opposed to looking at what truly happened. And this movement had started out as kind of a silent voice, and it took about a decade of working. One of the most effective victims coalitions actually has been Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and they've had changes that have been made to drunk driving laws that make very strict what happens in drunk driving, and that's all been as part of victims' rights. However, the more practical way that we see victims' rights is something known as the victim's impact statement. And what a victim impact statement is at a trial, and you actually saw this recently when we were looking at the sexual assault cases at the female gymnastics camp of the US Olympics, is what it allows victims to do is they're able to come forward and express their opinions and their feelings as to what happened and how the crime impacted them. Now, this does not impact a jury prior to sentencing. Not prior to a verdict. What will normally happen, the order of this, is the jury will reach a verdict, and then the jury will reach a verdict, and then we will move on to sentencing. And between that and sentencing, which is normally done by a judge, but sometimes done by a jury, then as we move on to sentencing, what we'll then see is the victim's impact statement. And if you look at some of the victim's impact statements, and I invite you to YouTube actually, victim's impact statements, US gymnastics, and take a look at it, you'll see that it really does have a huge impact. The other thing that victims' impact statements provide are closure. Now, by and large, victims' impact statements are tools that are used by prosecutors to get tougher sentences. And sometimes problems arise. And when problems arise is when the people that are representing the victim want to forgive. And this has created a huge problem, particularly in capital punishment cases, where sometimes families of the victim the state wants capital punishment, and the family of the victim wants forgiveness and wants to provide a nonviolent form of closure. The question is then, do we take into account the interests of the victim, or do we look more at the interests of the state? Now, I actually want you, as part of the discussion board, to answer that question. When the wishes of the victim are different from the wishes of the prosecutor, what role should the victim play, particularly if the victim is leaning toward forgiveness and we're looking at crimes that are unfathomable? So I put up a discussion board for that. I also want to let you know that I believe it's next week that your outlines, your 3 bullet points are due for your exercise, for the exercise on, for the first exercise of the semester project. I have posted under semester project 1 a grading rubric, so use that rubric as you work along. Now, as I mentioned on Tuesday, class will be canceled on Thursday because of the jail tours that are going on. However, if you'd like to go to the Poinsett County Jail and see it, you're more than welcome to attend the tours. The tours are at 2 o'clock and 3:30, and you just meet in front of the Poinsett County Jail, and you'll go into the courtroom, which is as you go in the door to the right. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. With this, I know with this class, sometimes it's a little hard, particularly with videos like we watched on Tuesday, but I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Take care and have a good one.